Welcome to Good Soil Talk Double D, the fourth in a five-part series called Christianity, a Reboot. My name is Ron Rude. Humanity's problem is that Cain's narrative has become the dominant narrative of our species. It is the air we breathe and the airways that bedevil us 24/7. In fact, most of us, myself included, by and large, live Cain's narrative in our private, public, national, and even church lives. We've become accustomed to living so out of relationship on so many levels that we think this is normal. The German theologian Paul Tillich calls this condition of disconnection dis-ease. The Danish philosopher, theologian, and poet Søren Kierkegaard used the term a sickness unto death. For St. Paul in Romans 8 is a groaning in travail. A friend of mine suggests the phrase existential disrepair. I like that. Another word might even be perishing. To be out of relationship in these ways is to be perishing. And so when you think about it, Jesus didn't come really to overcome death. Death is a part of life. Rather, he came to overcome perishing. And to be perishing is to be out of relationship with my neighbor, with nature, with my own inner soul and spirit and self, and with God. Well, in God's secondary scriptures, the Bible, God addresses this lost condition, first in the Old Testament, through a flood parable, through fashioning a chosen people, by inviting the refugee Israelites to be respectful residents in a new land, by way of laws, kings, prophets, as well as by constantly sending many Abels over the centuries in the form of rabbis, additional prophets, wise women and men, indigenous peoples, people on the margins, and most importantly, by sending Abels to us in the form of the wisdom embedded in the wider community of life. God is serious in trying to redeem us. Finally, God decided to come in person. This is the Christian gospel. However, God can't actually come in person because God is too big, too awesome, too utterly overwhelming. We would all have heart attacks in God's presence, acute myocardial infarctions. So, in the poetic and liturgical words of St. Paul in his letter to the Philippians, chapter 2, the eternal Christ of God of the Trinity empties self of self, and very God of very God, and becomes a mammal of the species Homo sapiens, Jesus of Nazareth. Which is quite a miracle because the eternal Christ of God of the Trinity is not a human being, just like the eternal Christ of God is not a horse or a bristlecone pine tree or a desert beetle. I suppose if horses had been the out-of-whack species, a horse would have been born in Bethlehem. Or if pine trees or desert beetles hadn't been doing their job, these would have been the creatures looking for lodging on that holy night. But it was the human creature who was lost. And the Christ of God came to seek and to save the lost. With a full, embodied, and transformative message, Homo sapiens, you are forgiven, follow me. Homo sapiens, you are forgiven for being at war with your neighbor, with my creation, with your own inner soul, and with me. And I'm going to forgive you today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day, and next, and next. You are forgiven. However, forgiveness is not God's ultimate goal, and alone is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. God doesn't say, I forgive you humans, now everything is fine. Now go write a bunch of praise songs and liturgies telling me how wonderful you think I am that I forgive you for messing up my world. No, God's ultimate goal is not forgiveness, but the transformation of our species. So Jesus also says, follow me. And not just follow me as opposed to following someone else, but follow me as opposed to staying where you are. So, follow you where, Jesus? Follow me. I want you to meet your neighbor. And of course, Jesus had to go and say that my neighbor is not just people I like or people like me, but my neighbor is also and especially the stranger and strange one, outcasts, aliens, illegal aliens. The subject of immigration is a complicated one, and I have no clue of what policies would be best. There are a lot of factors to consider, and thoughtful people of goodwill need to be working these out. However, I do know that characterizations of these neighbors as anything other than beloved by God and worthy of everyone's utmost respect is on the side of the demonic. Such views and rhetoric, especially coming from Mr. Trump and his conservative supporters in the public, in Congress, and in the conservative media, are, in my view, in the anti-God camp. No policy of justice and integrity will ever come from such vile and I-centered ideologies. So Jesus, the risen Christ, today says, follow me. I want you to meet your neighbor. I want to bring you face to face and heart to heart into circumstances and situations outside of your comfort zone, because this is where my kind of healing will take place. So maybe you give haircuts to homeless men at a local soup kitchen. Or you volunteer at a local hospital to hold and cuddle babies with spina bifida, or who are addicted to crack, or maybe who will die soon, and your job is to simply hold them and love on them. Maybe you assist your neighbor in shopping for groceries because she's losing her mind to the world of dementia. Or you bring water to immigrants crossing desert borders to save their lives. Abel of Nazareth, the risen and living Christ, calls each of us differently, but dramatically, out of our comfort zones, into harm's way, so to speak. Why? To change us, so that we will never be the same. And Jesus says, follow me. I want you to meet God's creation. Homo sapiens, you aren't doing too well. You daily disrespect what I hold dear. You put your desires above mine and trash my beloved world in frightful ways. Humans, you are in need of profound reconstruction. I forgive you, but you need to follow me back into the Father's household and learn to live more honorably amidst the dwelling places with all of my family. Follow me to meet your Creator's world. Follow me. You need to even meet your own inner spirit and soul and self. Your disconnections have made you an empty cavity, and you roam the earth trying to fill the void with nonsense. Follow me. You need to even meet and learn to respect yourself. And follow me. Finally, I want you to meet my dad, my mom, your Creator, the true one above all others, who owns everything, including this earth, including your neighbor, including all of nature, and including you. The risen Christ says, you are forgiven, follow me, and Christians are people who do this. So who is this risen and alive Christ walking the earth today, calling each of us? He is our peace, breaking down the dividing wall of hostility, that he might create in himself a new humanity. He came and proclaimed peace to those far off and those near. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but citizens of the household of God. One of the profound insights that the biblical narrative offers is that God considers creation to be tov. This is an important word which means good. In the Genesis 1 creation story, as God makes the earth and stars, oceans and planets, animals including humans, insects and birds, it is all declared to be good, very good, tov. Tov is a beautiful and inspiring word. However, it's important to understand that tov does not mean perfect. There never was a time of perfection, an Eden paradise of picture-perfect bliss. Certainly the natural sciences know this, but Genesis knows this too. Actually, the idea of perfection or paradise is a much later Greek and Roman construct that mistakenly, by many Christians, got imposed backward onto this earlier Hebrew word. So Eden was good, not perfect, according to Genesis 1. So what does tov mean? Well, it means towering trees and rippled streams. It means mountain peaks and berries and wild greens. It means heavy rains, tenacious snows, and the wonderful sounds of squawking, chittering, chattering, growling, prattling, garish and noisy life. Tov also means rain and wind and seasons and fungi and earthquakes. Earthquakes? Yes, God made the world with earthquakes. The giant tectonic plates on Earth's crust are constantly moving 1 to 4 inches per year. And when they build up enough pressure, they snap and that's what an earthquake or a tremor is. This is all part of a colossal circulation system that makes this an alive planet. In fact, without earthquakes, life would probably not exist on Earth. Tov means termites, snow and ice, uplift and erosion, lightning, photosynthesis, hurricanes. Hurricanes? Yes. They help distribute the accumulated hot air around the equator belt to other parts of the globe. Now, obviously, if a hurricane hits you or your town, it's a bad thing. And as citizens, we need to help one another through these rough times. But on a larger scale, God seems to have made a Tov world with hurricanes, for good reason. However, and this is important, it must also be said that the elevated and more extreme hurricanes that we are seeing today are not part of God's Tov garden, but are the result of human misbehavior, of I-centeredness, of unintelligence. A significant portion of humanity is behaving so badly, including we Cains in America, that systemic global climatic patterns are being sufficiently and significantly distorted by the pollution we cause through irresponsible agricultural practices, the toxic wastes we create, and the fossil fuels we overuse. Such behavior is not Tov, but sin. And those people, including most of today's conservatives, who choose to put their heads in the ground and be in denial about what multiple fields of science are coming to understand and are warning us about, such people should be, in my opinion, disenfranchised. Not only are they not displaying even a minimal level of intelligence or wisdom, but their worldview and behavior is blatantly destructive and evil. In fact, many of them, unintentionally and even intentionally, seem to proudly champion and boast Cain's agenda. Tov means evaporation, conductivity, meteorites, bacteria. Our bodies contain trillions of cells of bacteria in us, on us, and around us. Bacteria travel in and out of us constantly, even into our cells and the water we drink and the air we breathe, the food we eat, things that we touch. But if I were to have the bacteria from my world removed, I would die instantly. Bacteria is necessary in God's Tov world. Tov means volcanoes, sex, gravity, tides, youth, middle age, old age, viruses, forest fires, life, and death. Death? Yes. What if nothing ever died? What would this planet be like? We think it's crowded now, but think how many gamble quail there would be, and beluga whales, and Chilean mesquite trees, salamanders, and even Homo sapiens. Such a scenario is too bizarre even to contemplate. For good reason, the Creator has woven death into the fabric of life. Speaking of our species, it took about 200,000 years for our population to reach about 1.5 billion. This happened in the year 1901. Then, look, in just 60 years it doubled again. And now, over the past 50-some years, it has more than doubled again. The near future? Yikes. Look at how the population of our species is spiking. One has to wonder if Earth can endure this many of us, and if we can endure this many of ourselves. By the way, high birth rates are only part of the problem. Here in the United States, the average person consumes 8 times our share of the world's resources and causes 8 times our share of the world's pollution. What does this mean? Well, if our current U.S. population is a little over 300 million, this means that our nation's resource usage and negative ecological impact is equivalent to a population of over 2.4 billion. Scary, isn't it? But what if there was no death? No, for good reason, God has created a Tov world that includes both life and death. In the next and final Good Soil Talk Double E, we will wrap things up and try to put this reboot of Christianity into a manageable and usable whole.